Hello and welcome to Digital Nation, your weekly journey around the UK via the news stories from the local TV channels all around the country. In this week's show, we meet a retired couple clowning it up in Lancashire. We uncover a hidden treasure underground in Crystal Palace. And we discover a designer's den in a shed in Nottingham. And if you'd like to comment, you can use Twitter and the hashtag #DigitalNation. Our first trip is to Leeds, where modern technology is being used to enable visitors to see how a present-day medical museum once existed over 150 years ago. Virtual reality provides an immersive experience from days gone by.
It's Thackeray Medical Museum as you've never quite literally seen it before, delving deeper into its history using the most up-to-date technology of today. These virtual reality viewers are now located throughout the museum, but they don't explore the world of medicine like many of the other exhibitions here. Rather, the building itself, as it was used many, many years ago.
So the Thackeray Medical Museum is housed in what used to be the Leeds Union Workhouse. So over 150 years ago, this building was full of inmates who were here because they were so poor, they couldn't afford to live, they couldn't afford to eat. After that, it was used as the First World War war hospital for soldiers from the front line. And nowhere in the building do we talk about this. We talk about medical history, but we don't talk about the building's purpose.
And it's the museum's volunteers and staff, the characters featured in the images, that have made this part of history a virtual reality, along with some impressive technology. These postcards of the former workhouse take virtual to a whole new level. Funded by Arts and Heritage, the project is trying out a new museum experience. Only 9, including Thackeray, are using this technology in the north. Now it's my turn to have a look through the viewfinders here, but I'm not so sure about this because it is rumoured that the corridors here at the Thackeray Museum are still haunted by the ghosts of those former inmates at the workhouse from all those years ago.
There's a couple in Lancashire that instead of putting their feet up in retirement, have put their funny feet on instead. Grandaddy and Nanny Trumbull are a real pair of clowns who stay young by keeping the crowds chuckling at children's parties.
I didn't really decide to hang up the hat, it's just they have a policy where you reach a certain age and you have to retire, unfortunately, otherwise I'd probably still be there.
It's just a stay-at-home mum, really.
Gardening in the sun, cups of tea in the afternoon and lazy midweek walks along the prom. These are the perks everyone looks forward to after retirement. Everyone, it seems, except Ron and Lillian, who went and got themselves a new job. Ron and Lillian, aka Grandaddy and Nanny Trumbull, are spending retirement clowning around. They've become a regular addition at children's parties around the county. And while they may be young at heart...
Well, the act is old-fashioned.
Yeah.
Nanny Trumbull is the calming influence.
Well, try to be.
And I am a terrible little boy, really, aren't I?
Yes, definitely.
And Nanny Trumbull controls me in an old-fashioned way with a slapstick.
Right. Is she behind me?
So we just come up with tricks.
Yeah, just silly things, really.
Yeah. That children like.
The sillier and the dafter it is, the better.
Yeah.
You know.
Even for a clown, it's no easy gig to hold the attention of a room full of 6-year-olds. But this double act are more than happy to be laughed at. Literally.
Well known for its colourful rows of houses, brightening up its skyline, Bristol is brimming with artistic flair. But now a local architect is on a mission to encourage more residents outside the city centre to turn their city into the UK's official colour capital.
You never have to look too far in Bristol for a splash of colour. And now, thanks to a project started by architect Stride Draglown, this residential rainbow looks set to seep into more areas of our city.
We had an event in the office every week of the year, and we decided to use all of those events to turn them into this book, because we thought we had some really interesting themes and ideas which we could actually give to Bristol as a bit of a why don't we look at these ideas. And one of those ideas was the colour capital idea, and it was actually voted the most popular out of all of the ideas in the book.
The colour capital is open to anyone who wishes to take part, but of course, with so many listed buildings around, some care will need to be taken. Bristol's colourful houses are a prominent part of its attraction to tourists. Yes, the Clifton Suspension Bridge is a grand feat of engineering, but it's missing that rainbow vibe.
They just seem to fit in well, whoever came up with the idea in the first place. For those colourful houses in Hotwells, for example, when you stand at the SS Great Britain and look across towards the grain barge, I could just sit and take in that view on a sunny day for hours.
And as this project grows, it's hoped that Bristol's tourism wealth might be spread about a little.
So what we want to do is to get people to move around the city more. I think that Bristol has some well-established routes that visitors come to.
So far, your go-to hotspots for these boldly hued homes are places like Clifton Wood, Hotwells and Totterdown. But as their popularity grows, it's hoped places as far in as fish ponds will burst into bloom.
To Cambridge now, and the unveiling of a long-forgotten hospital, responsible for saving many lives of soldiers back from the Great War. Once used for post-war housing, the site is now occupied by Cambridge University's Central Library. And one centenarian and former resident turned up to join in the celebrations.
The 1st Eastern General Hospital treated over 70,000 soldiers during the Great War, but it's largely been forgotten about because the site is now home to Cambridge University Central Library. But now, after raising £25,000 of funds, the Surgeon General of the British Armed Forces unveiled this memorial on the wall of Clare College.
This is a rarity, and there are other hospitals, but nothing like this that I know of.
An enormous number of people worked in the hospital. Many people have their parents met in the hospital. One might be a patient and one might be a nurse. And for 10 years after the war, the huts of the hospital were used as housing. And there are people who remember living there. One of the people who came today, who is 100 years old, lived there from the age of 4 to the age of 11 and remembers it.
Edna Welton and Peter Sieber both grew up in the temporary housing that followed on from the hospital. While 100-year-old Edna can remember playing on the backs of the colleges and fishing in the pond, Peter can't recollect a thing, because he only lived here until he was 2 years old. But he's pleased that the place of his birth will no longer be forgotten about.
I mean, it's a pity it went on for 100 years and just wasn't recognised. Most people in Cambridge still don't know it was here. But hopefully after this and the inscription on the wall, people will get to know a bit about it.
When 50 Shades of Grey blew up the box office last year, it was only a matter of time before a follow-up sequel was made. But when a shed-based designer in Nottingham was contacted to be involved, understandably, she was more than a little shocked.
From a Nottingham shed to a Hollywood studio, local designer Samantha Peach couldn't believe her eyes when she saw her very own creation on the main character of the latest 50 Shades film.
So these are the masks.
Wow, they are gorgeous, aren't they? So how much did you know then?
I knew that they'd been bought initially. I knew they'd been bought in America and then been rushed off to Vancouver. And then I was contacted and they said it was being used for a Hollywood film. But I had no idea what it was, and certainly had no idea if they would actually use them. And then, yeah, then they told me the film it had been bought for, and then they needed my consent.
And so were you a little bit nervous then when you found out it was that? Because obviously it's got a reputation, hasn't it?
Yes, I was. I was definitely nervous because I think, for me, the main reason I made these and sell them is that there's something lovely, and I tried to do it hopefully in an elegant and a classy and a really subtle way. So it's a film, I think it has been done in that way. So that was a massive relief as well. No, I'm just massively proud of how good it looks. You know, I see pictures sometimes with customers with them on, but I've never seen this kind of high definition, sweeping, with a quite gorgeous, what's his name, Jamie Dornan. I mean, he's quite lush. Him involved in it as well.
So what's your niche then when it comes to the masks?
My thing is that they are gorgeous, elegant, but more than anything, comfortable and easy to wear.
And so is there going to be a huge boost to business, do you think, once people find out that you're the maker of the mask?
I know. Well, it has already in America. It sold out overnight in America, so that was quite exciting. I mean, this one actually was already the best-selling mask. Ironically, I mean, they didn't know that when they bought it.
So what's next then?
So just keep doing it and getting better and tweaking them and making them more and more lovely.
And that brings us to the end of part 1 and to quiz time. In which city is Henry VIII's warship, the Mary Rose, on display? Is it A, London, B, Plymouth, or C, Portsmouth? Join us in part 2 for the answer. Welcome back to Digital Nation. Before the break, we asked you, in which city is Henry VIII's warship, the Mary Rose, on display? And the answer is C, Portsmouth. The Mary Rose was salvaged in 1982 in one of the most complex and expensive projects in the history of maritime archaeology. When it's time to retire, what better way to spend the day than a little foray into oil painting? Well, down in Hampshire, there's an ex-art teacher that's picked up her brushes once again to indulge in her passion for landscapes and rivers.
Kathy was an art teacher who also ran a pottery for 17 years until she gave it up due to back trouble, but it was then that she picked up her painting again.
Now I'm retired, I've been painting every day non-stop for 10 years. My poor husband sits there watching the telly, watching the sport, but he don't mind, that's what he wants to do. So it's pretty good, a good life right now. And my passion is painting British English landscape, and that's my passion. I'm doing a flower right now because it's the colour I love as well as the pattern.
71-year-old Kathy first started painting aged 5 when she was introduced to it by her granddad, who was a local artist.
I did inherit his gift, thank goodness, and I've never stopped thanking him since.
Kathy's biggest passion is hunting for and then painting British rivers, although she also recreates other images. Kathy shared how she was creating her currant blue flower.
This is acrylic paint mixed with an acrylic medium to make it thick. And then I just squidge it on in various ways, skillfully of course.
Over 125 years old, the former Victoria Infirmary in Glasgow was one of the first hospitals to have boilers instead of open fires. Now the site has been sold for redevelopment, so we can take a trip behind the scenes to dissect the building's history.
Today we're at the Victoria Infirmary, which recently closed after 125 years of serving the community of the South Side. We're going to have a look inside and see what's what its future is, and maybe dig up a few old memories. The Victoria Infirmary was built in several phases, and I'm actually standing here in the very, very first part of the building. But through that door was where the nurses lived, and this lovely corridor across here was called the conservatory, or to put it another way, no man's land. because all the nurses were female and men were not allowed down there. So this walk here was something which I, as a man, wouldn't be allowed to do. The Victoria was the first hospital ever not to have open fires in the wards, so somebody in there stoking and making fires every day. This is one of the balconies at the end of the wards of the Victoria, and they were built this way so that people could be brought out, sometimes even in their beds, to get the fresh air. If you think of what Glasgow used to be like, all the great black buildings in the city, well, just imagine what was happening inside your chest and how black your lungs were as well. Strange standing in one of the old wards in the Vicky. I think over 100 years patients have come here to be treated. Some have left, some haven't. And at some time in the future, somebody's going to be living here. It's quite a strange idea, but all part of the history of these great old buildings, and it's great that it's got a new use then, that will have a future, which lots of old buildings don't, so all bright in the end.
Coming up, we shine a light on a gasworks in Belfast and dig out a hidden underground treasure in London. Now, where did I put that tank?
If you lived in Caerphilly in the 19th century, you might have heard of Dr. William Price, because he was a bit alternative. He was one of the first British vegetarians, a practicing druid, loved running naked through the countryside, and he hated ceremonial burials, claiming they spread diseases, caused pollution, and wasted land. So, in 1884, after a death in the family, he performed something that no one had done in centuries, a cremation. He was put on trial for causing a public nuisance, but was found not guilty, leading to the legalization of cremation. When he himself kicked the bucket, 20,000 people watched him flame out on top of a 9-ton bonfire, which he sold tickets for beforehand. Proof once again that when it comes to creativity, innovation, and losing the plot, in Caerphilly Mint.
Hidden under the road, London has an underground treasure that until recently was closed off to the public. However, now thanks to a community project, this forgotten gem is open to all. So let's check out the picturesque subterranean passage in the capital's Crystal Palace.
It was basically built as a first-class entrance from the high-level station into the Crystal Palace. So before that there was a low-level station, and due to the popularity of that, they wanted to kind of build on that, and so they decided to build a high-level station. First-class passengers would have come directly up next to the organ in the Crystal Palace, which was designed by Joseph Paxton, and it was quite famous from being the Great Exhibition in Hyde Park, and due to its popularity there, but again it was only temporary, and they wanted to sort of extend on that popularity, and they decided to bring it here.
It's a place of beauty, it's underground, it's curious for everybody, not only in Crystal Palace but in South East London and actually across the board, and I think that's what captures people's excitement here. It's underground, people want to know what's here, and when they come here it's the wow factor, it's the unknown, it's the fact that it's underground, it's under the road. And yeah, I think it's an amazing project that the Friends of Crystal Palace Subway have done, and it allows a kind of commercial to sit along the community. The community aspect here in Crystal Palace is very strong. It reaches to the heart of many people here, and I think for people coming to visit, knowing that there could be 1 minute an amazing event which is a commercial aspect but also being open for community events for children, for the general public, I think just makes it an amazing part.
This is really hidden, you know, being under the road. I think also the fact that we've had to ballot and restrict our numbers for 3 years means that each year we build up a backlog of about 1,000 people who've wanted to get in. And social media has been fantastic in the community. The word has been spread, and we will be open more and more. What we really need is volunteers. The more people that can volunteer their time, the more we can get open.
In times gone by, it wasn't electricity that lit our streets, but man-made gas instead. Carrickfergus in Northern Ireland was one of many towns that had its own gasworks, supplying all the homes in the town. The gasworks even hired equipment to the public, such as gas rings and lamps, and eventually it raised enough funds to build Belfast's very own City Hall.
The gasworks has been here since 1855, producing gas to light the streets, because initially it was for public safety, so people could go out at night. It was a safety factor, and then eventually it became a domestic and then eventually industrial usage. So Carrickfergus, as a small town, like most small towns throughout Ireland, all had their own gasworks.
Initially, as I say, it was for domestic use. People could get a gas ring and make a hot breakfast. That was a revolution for people, that you put the little ring on and you could have a light from it as well. So you could have a cooked breakfast before you went out in the mornings. It was quite a social movement in that way. People funded it themselves, but later on, particularly in Belfast, they would hire out. You could, pay so much a week to hire a cooker, hire a light, etc. And they brought in a lot of money. I'm sure perhaps most of you know that the wonderful Belfast City Hall was built by the money that was raised from the Belfast Gas Works. So, it was a big money maker. They are very interesting places. I would encourage people to come along and have a look at the gasworks. It's very hard to describe, but it's a fabulous place to visit.
When was the last time you saw a giant piece of fruit floating down your high street? Well, Cardiff saw peachy scenes when the city was taken over for their recent Roald Dahl event. The whole of the city centre celebrated the writer's anniversary, and even the buildings became a moving canvas. And that's all from Digital Nation and your journey around the local TV channels for this week. Don't forget, all the previous episodes are available on bbc.co.uk/Digital Nation. And why not check out the website of your own local TV channel? So until next week, goodbye.